What's cracking, quarantine comrades? Welcome to another health conscious episode of the Creator Differences podcast. I'm Dallas, and I'm so desperate for time out of the house that I'll see just about anything at the drive-in.
Jesus Christ. I'm Colin, and I don't really watch movies that much now that I think about it.
We've noticed.
Yeah, that's why you don't have anything to talk about today when we're talking about our things.
Good point.
Yeah.
And I'm Demi, and I have so many movies for you guys to check out today. Welcome to Quarantine Watch. Today we are going to be talking about 5 movies that we've been watching over quarantine. Gabby cannot join us because she was not feeling well.
Yes, she is looking for random pills in her house to pop to solve her.
No, she's not.
Don't
that
tell
was your
them that.
advice.
Horrible.
That was your advice that she should not follow.
She's probably not doing that. We want to be responsible with our platform and say, if you feel sick or lightheaded, don't just pop random pills. It probably won't help.
Jesus.
Anyway, before we get into a random assortment of movies, please like and subscribe because our Deadpool episode didn't do nearly as well as I wanted it to. And I'm kind of mad at all of you guys for that.
Yeah,
all of you
definitely
meaning
didn't.
All of you internet people, not Demi and Colin. We did our
best. What's first up on your list?
First up on my list, in case you don't watch these or listen to them, I always start with a little statement about the movie that sometimes qualifies as a hint and sometimes doesn't. This one is a video game movie that only feels like one for the last half hour.
Ooh.
I feel like Colin might have a guess here.
No, see, that's the thing is there are so few of them that I should be able to know this.
Maybe it'll help that I will narrow down everything on my list I saw within the last year. So if it came out before 2020, it's not on my list today.
What
I have no idea.
movie came out like I don't know. This is upsetting.
It is called Monster Hunter.
Oh, you saw
the
that.
Mila Jovovich movie.
Yes.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was like in one ear out the other for me. I knew that it existed, but I didn't care. So
Did you watch it?
No. Because I've never played the game, so I was just like, eh.
Oh, it's a game?
Right. It is a game.
Yeah, it's a series of games. They're coming out with a new one, I think, later this year. Monster Hunter Rise. Yeah.
It's crazy. I didn't even know it was a game, but after watching it and looking up what I had just seen, I was like, oh, this is a very expansive video game series. It's been going on for a very long time. It is written and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. He directed the old school Mortal Kombat movie, and he wrote and directed all the Resident Evil movies because he's married to Mia Jovovich.
Except for this upcoming reboot that's about to come out because they was like, nah, fam.
Is she in the new one?
No.
Okay, yeah, he directed hers. It stars Mia, Tony Jaa, Ron Perlman, T.I., Megan Good.
What is this cast?
Right, it's the most random cast.
I know Mila Jovovich, but everybody else, I didn't know that they were in this movie.
That's the thing.
What is T.I. doing?
Honestly, I would...
Whatever he wants.
So guys, remember I said I'll watch anything at the drive-in to get out of the house.
Yes.
Assuming Kayla's down to watch it because
that makes sense.
We only go to the drive-in together. And we were like, yeah, we got $20. Let's give it a shot. And then we looked up who's in it. And I was like, T.I. isn't. Megan Good is in this movie. Tony Jaa, he's dope. What's he doing? Ron Perlman?
Tony Jaa is amazing.
Well, Ron Perlman was what got me there. The weirdest thing, there's a battle rapper from the early 2000s named Jin. Jin. Also MC Jin. And he was a super prolific battle rapper back when I was watching. I still watch battle rap. But back when I got into it. And he's in this movie. And I didn't know he was an actor. So I was even more confused than when I saw T.I. and Megan Good because, they'd be popping up sometimes. But I was like, what is Jen doing here? Anyway, it's not important. The summary is when Lieutenant Artemis and her loyal soldiers are transported to a new world, they engage in a desperate battle for survival against enormous enemies with incredible powers. Colin, did you say if you played this game before?
I have never played them, no.
Okay. So I had never heard of them. And I didn't know it was a video game movie going in. But it feels like it turns into a video game movie after an hour of screen time. And it was very fun for that last half hour. Ron Perlman doesn't show up until it doesn't show up and do anything until there's half an hour left. And then there's this weird anthropomorphic cat that's a chef. And
what?
Yes. It's a video game.
See, that's fine in video games. But when you translate it to a movie, you got to start explaining some stuff.
That's the thing. That's the thing, though. Is before that, it just felt like a military movie with monsters in it because you have this military group and they're like, oh, what's this? It's a giant skeleton. Oh, we got to find out what's going on here. And then the monster shows up. People get picked off. It's a whole thing. But I'm like, okay, this sucks for them. But then later on, Ron Perlman shows up and he has this anthropomorphic cat and they're talking about big creatures and everything looks different. And I'm like, yo, where was this for the last 60 minutes when I was just watching Mia and Tony Jaa like form an uneasy alliance and try to get through their language barrier? It's just, it felt a little disjointed, but they started it off in a more subtle way. They ended it way more fun. And I was like, yo, this would have been a great movie if you just made this movie. But I also didn't know the game, so I don't know enough to know if this is a bad adaptation. Is the game like this? Should I be
So
mad
from
for
what
people?
I know of the games, they like from the jump, they're fantasy games.
Yeah.
So all that stuff with the modern stuff and the military and all that isn't what the games are at all. It sounds like the last half hour is more what the games are.
Yeah, because the last half hour I was like, oh, this feels like a video game. And then when I found out it wasn't, that makes sense. That's what all that weird stuff was at the end. But also that was more fun. Also, Ron Perlman, always a win, but we didn't get enough of him. And yeah, I don't know who to recommend this to because it's like, I want to say fans of the game, but if they messed it up, then I don't want to recommend it to them. But I don't know if they messed it up because I didn't play the game. So yeah, watch it if you want. That's my recommendation.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, fun fact, their daughter, and when I say their, I mean Paul W.S. Anderson's and Mila Jovovich's daughter, is playing the younger version of Black Widow in Black Widow.
Nice.
She is
Yeah,
also
good for
playing
her.
Wendy in Disney's live-action Peter Pan movie.
Nice. Get that work.
Work. All right, cool. So I'm going to start off with the most recent movies that I have watched over this past weekend. We are going to start with I Care a Lot, which is currently on Netflix, directed by Jay Blakeson, starring Rosamund Pike, Asa Gonzalez, Diane Wiest, and Peter Dinklage. This is always fun to tell people about this movie because I'm like, yeah, it's a dark comedy about elder abuse.
Mm.
A crooked legal guardian who drains the savings of her elderly wards meets her match when a woman she tries to swindle turns out to be more than she first appears. Yeah, so we're going to... First off, this movie is great. I loved every second watching this movie. It's a really original story. It's got some tropes in it that are very familiar, but it feels fresh because of the story that it's in. It's pretty well written. What's up, Dallas? What you got?
I have a question. Is Diane Wiest the elderly woman that's like
Yes,
more than she expected? Oh, she's great. I like her.
Yeah, she's great. But yeah, it's well written. It's slickly shot. It's got some great editing. And it is wild from start to finish with a lot of fun twists. There's a lot of amazing acting, especially Rosamund Pike, who is in her Gone Girl bag. Oh my gosh. She's just so great whenever she has to play characters like these. Like, people are like, yo, you know, when she's got the straight bob cut like that, something bad is about to happen. She's about to go all in. She's so good in this movie. Like, within the first scene that she's in, I was just like, bro, she's so great. And I remember thinking that she should have won an Oscar for Gone Girl. She's so good. Amazing. And Peter Dinklage is a good foil to her in this movie. They act off of each other really well.
Nice.
But yeah, I loved it. It's really just a movie about awful people doing awful things. Everybody in this movie is an awful person, to the point where I was watching the movie and I was like, I'm not supposed to root for any of you. What's happening right now? It's like, it's one of those movies where every time one of them gets back at the other, it's like, yeah, you deserve that.
Goodness gracious.
I can't even root for you. But like, yeah, you guys all deserve this. It's great. It's been fun watching Rosamund Pike and Asa Gonzalez promote the movie, because all they ever do is call each other their wives because their characters are together in the movie. It's so funny. And they've got a lot of really good chemistry, seeing as they have to be a couple in the movie. They're great. This movie is it's pretty funny at times. And it really does touch on the issue of people taking advantage of the system and taking advantage of elderly people for their own come up. This is a thing that actually happens. It's a commentary on conservatorship, but it's done in a way that is pretty interesting to the average moviegoer. After I finished watching it, all I could think about is the fact that Dallas consistently talks about how I only like awful characters and awful people.
Yes. Case in point.
And which, that's not true. I also really like good heroes as well. That's not true. We just had a whole episode where I was like praising Korra.
True.
And after watching this movie, I literally out loud asked myself, why am I like this? Why do I like things like this? Because I really did enjoy that movie. And I was like, okay, well, you know what it is. It's just, God, I think it's because I could never bring myself to be such an awful person. And I just
Yeah.
want to know how people could go to such lengths to be that terrible to people.
I feel it.
In this movie, it's capitalism. So
Yeah, it's usually the answer.
so there you go. I highly recommend I Care a Lot. It's wild from start to finish. If you don't mind watching awful people be awful, but also just like have awful things done to them because they're being awful, I would highly recommend watching. It's great.
All right.
Dallas, what's on your list, man?
So you would not recommend that movie to Colin?
Yeah, I was saying,
Colin,
no.
Colin doesn't do well with the awful people.
No, Colin doesn't do well. Dallas, I would be interested in your opinion of it. But I know that you only tolerate that sort of thing depending.
Yeah, usually I have a higher tolerance for outlandish comedies that feature awful people.
And this is a comedy. This is, I mean, it's a dark comedy. This is what it's meant to be.
Right.
It's meant to be funny. So you might be able to tolerate this. This isn't like an action movie, or well, it's a little bit of action, but it's not a drama or something where you're watching awful people be awful. This is a comedy where people are being
Right.
awful. But yeah, I was at the beginning when you start watching these people get scammed. It is like, oh my gosh, like you're scamming old people. You're using old people to scam the system. Like this is terrible. This is disgusting. But the movie makes an amusing movie out of that.
All right. Good to know.
Watch out for your elderly loved ones, people.
Yeah. Number 2 for me, because Gabby's not here and Colin doesn't watch things, is a period piece that's as girl powerlicious as it is ridiculous.
You lost me in period piece.
Girl power. We haven't used girl powerlicious in so long. That's where you lost me. I got stuck.
Yeah, man, I wish Gabby was here. There's so much in this episode that I wish she was here for.
I don't know.
no.
Which
Yeah,
What you
this
got?
is another drive-in movie that I'm sure Colin has heard of it, but I don't know who else has. It's called Shadow in the Cloud.
Oh yeah, you did see.
Oh, that's right. This was a movie that Colin was looking forward to, I think. I think it was on his most
Mhm.
anticipated list.
I still haven't seen it, but I want to.
This is on Colin. This is on your list.
I believe it might have been, yeah.
That makes. I get it's hard to remember because you weren't there. It's directed by Roseanne Liang, and it was written by Roseanne Liang and Max Landis, who I thought was canceled.
Ooh.
So imagine my surprise seeing his name come up.
Wait, who?
Max
Max Landis?
Landis.
Oh yeah. Oh, there was a big controversy about the fact that this movie was made because he wrote the script. But I think they
Yeah.
rewrote it consistently after he wrote the first script.
Possibly.
Is he still credited?
Yeah. Like when I was looking up who wrote this movie, because I had some questions for whoever that was. I was like, oh, Max Landis. That's that guy that I don't like.
The
it
guy
stars-
has written one great movie, and everything else has not been great.
well,
Was that
what?
the superpower one that I can't remember the name
Chronicle.
of?
Chronicle's amazing.
Yes.
didn't you like American Ultra? Was that you?
I
who liked American
did. I wouldn't say that American Ultra is great, but I
Fair.
did like American Ultra.
Ultra? Yes. He also wrote Mr. Right, which I thought was dope, and Bright, which is
Yeah.
divisive.
Bright gave me a good song. That was about it.
That soundtrack slaps.
Soundtrack slaps.
This movie stars Chloe Grace Moretz and a bunch of white dudes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, 2 of which are named Taylor John Smith and Nick Robinson, and then White Dude 3, White Dude 4, and White Dude 5.
I know Nick Robinson.
Yeah, I saw him. I was like, hey, that's that guy from that stuff. Summary. A female World War II pilot traveling with top secret documents on a B-17 Flying Fortress encounters an evil presence on board the flight. So Kayla and I were in the car, and we were like, drive-in? Yeah. What's at the drive-in? And then we saw this, and we were like, the hell is that? I don't know. It has Hit Girl in it. So we saw the trailer, and we were like, yo, what is this? Is it a horror movie? And it's kind of an action horror movie, but never at the same time.
What?
Like, yeah, there's some interesting tonal shifts. The start of the movie does a great job of creating this feeling of like tension and uncertainty because it's very claustrophobic. She's like in this secluded space and she talks to the other people in the plane through the radio. So you don't really get to see them. You just see her and then you hear them talking and you see. I was like, this is really cool.
Oh, that's a setup for a horror movie.
Right. Like narratively, this is great because we're just getting what they're saying. We don't see anything that's going on out there. And it feels very claustrophobic. It could very well stress somebody out. Gabby will probably have an anxiety attack watching that part of the movie.
Oh my God.
And then it kind of goes off the rails, but not in a way I enjoyed. I was like, cool, you built up all this tension. And then it's like, okay, so now we're just doing like a monster movie, I guess. That's cool, whatever. But the problem is during that beginning part, we're pretty much just establishing, hey, imagine what it was like for women in the 40s dealing with a bunch of military dudes in a plane.
Man, you could have said any time and I would have just assumed it was bad.
Yeah, always bad, I would assume. Never been there. But everything's worse in the 40s. Like, take any group of underrepresented people and say, hey, think about what it's like for this group. And then say, but in the 40s. And be like, oh, God, that's way worse. Because the 40s sucked.
I mean, yeah, I can't think of any good things that came out of the 40s. Maybe music.
And like, probably some of our grandparents and whatnot.
TV shows, maybe. Or not TV shows, movies.
Probably, There's some old ass movies that people still like. Yes, we get to a point where dudes start getting picked off one by one, but the movie spent all this time making me hate most of them. So I didn't care. And I was like, hey, that guy died.
You're like, good riddance.
Right, like which guy was that? The one who was saying rapey stuff? Or the one who was just being a dick in general? I don't know. Either way, he's dead. There's like one or two guys the movie doesn't try to make you hate. I don't even remember who survives. It's not that memorable of a movie. But Chloe, her acting is fantastic. And she proved again why I want her to be Wonder Girl, because she was girl powerlicious as hell. The movie's just so silly. It gets to a point where I have to suspend my disbelief in a way that's not going to give away any spoilers. But, you tell me monsters exist in this world. I'm like, cool, monsters exist, whatever. It's the 40s. Who knows what was happening back then? But then some of the stuff that they were doing, like the people, I'm like, well, you didn't tell me that they were superheroes. So what is the truth? What are we doing? What is this movie? Yeah, it was weird. She was doing all kind of stuff that she shouldn't be able to do, but it's Chloe Grace Moretz, so I forgive it. I recommend this movie if you're down to knock out an hour and a half with some silliness. I mean, there are probably other things you could watch that are silly and more fun, but, Colin, it was on your list, so watch it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, moving on.
Cool, moving on. Second movie on my list is Nomadland, which just came out on Hulu, directed by Chloe Zhao, starring Frances McDormand and David Strathairn, and actual people who are legitimately American nomads, which is really, really cool. After losing everything in the Great Recession, a woman embarks on a journey through the American West, living as a van-dwelling modern-day nomad. All right, so this movie, first off, I just want to say it's a very excellent movie. It's a fantastic movie. It's really well made, but it is also a very slow and quiet, introspective piece. Not a lot happens in this movie, except for this woman traveling across the country and doing odd jobs to support herself and stuff like that. It is a character study more than anything else. That's what you need to know about this movie. So I do not recommend it for everybody, even though I do think it's an amazing movie. If you are not down for a slow, character-driven piece, this is not for you. See, there are movies that, like, we talk about there being, like, Oscar movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you watch a movie and you're like, oh, that's an Oscar movie. But every so often there are Oscar movies where you watch the movie and it's like, it's not like the filmmaker was making this with the purpose of trying to win an Oscar. It literally was just a movie that came from their heart and from wanting to make this story. And I feel that in this movie. I definitely feel like, and it's also just such a unique topic of conversation that I was just like, yeah, where did you get this idea? It's also based on a book, by the way. It's based on a nonfiction book. But yeah, I was like, where would you get this idea to make a movie like about this particular subject? Like, why is that what you wanted to do? That's such an interesting thing to do. Chloe Zhao has a very interesting way of making movies. This is apparently the third movie that she's done where she has mixed fictional characters but also had people in the movie who are not fictional characters. They are non-fictional people who are just telling their stories and talking about their lives, but doing it within the context of a fictional story, which is really, really interesting way of filmmaking. There is beautiful cinematography throughout. It is all natural lighting from what I understand, which excites me because Chloe Zhao is also not set, she's already directed Marvel's Eternals. I'm excited to see what she does with that because they have talked about the fact that they did a lot of practical lighting for that movie as well. So I'll be interested to see what that looks like in that film because it's a big superhero movie. It's not something that you see a lot in big blockbuster movies. The last time I can think of a movie that did something like this was like The Revenant, which, speaking of The Revenant, she said that she was inspired by The Revenant for the action sequences in Eternals. So
I really thought you were going to say the action sequences in Nomadland, and I was like, bitch, where?
Where? There are no action sequences in Nomadland, guys. None at all. So I am, after watching Nomadland, because I did watch it because I specifically wanted to see what her directing style was like, because I am looking forward to Eternals like a lot more than most people probably are. I'm curious now, even more so, and very intrigued as to what she's going to bring. Like, what of her artistry is she going to bring to this big time superhero movie? But Nomadland is a very good movie if you're into this sort of thing. I am not. But it's not my thing. I always am very appreciative whenever I watch movies like this, though, because I do get a lot out of it, being a filmmaker myself. But yeah, it's definitely not something I would typically watch, but I would recommend it to people who are interested in like the Oscar movie type of thing, anything that's like really slow or more about character or just about humanity in general. It's very much a movie that's about grief and about getting away from like the capitalist lifestyle. I did find myself being very curious as to how people who live like this afford to live like that. Because if you're living in a van, like, do you have health insurance? How are you getting health insurance? You're doing random jobs, seasonal jobs, depending on where you are at the time. If you have a car issue, that's pretty pricey sometimes. How are you affording that? If you've got a doctor's issue, like you got to go to a doctor and stuff like that. Like it was just, I had a lot of questions, but it was also just a really interesting look at an aspect of life that I've never thought about and have never experienced and have never seen before. So, Nomadland, I would recommend, depending on who you are. Dallas, what's on your list?
We are at number 3. Yeah, number 3. Black Excellence, the movie.
Is this One Night in Miami?
It is One Night in Miami.
Great. This is on my list, but it's not on my list for today, so I'll just take it off my list.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll cover it now.
Yeah, let's talk about One Night in Miami.
Directed by the always amazing Regina King.
Yes.
Written by Kemp Powers, who wrote the stage play it's adapted from, and also wrote Soul, and like 5 episodes of Star Trek Discovery, which I haven't seen, but I've heard good things about.
I don't know if I would recommend it to you, but I think it's fantastic.
The theme of the day is, I don't know if I'd recommend it to y'all. Everything else on the list I've talked about so far is like, I'd recommend it to somebody. Not sure who. This movie, I recommend to everyone.
Yeah.
It stars Kingsley Ben-Adir, Eli Gorey, Aldous Hodge, and Leslie Odom Jr. Summary is a fictional account of one incredible night where icons Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown gathered discussing their roles in the civil rights movement and cultural upheaval of the 60s. These summaries are getting long. This whole cast is on point.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I was the most impressed by Eli as Muhammad Ali and Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X.
Yeah, Kingsley really was where I was very much impressed by Kingsley as Malcolm X.
He was Malcolm X. And it's always fun to see people play Muhammad Ali and see what they're going to do with it. And he did it very well. And I've seen that actor in a couple of things. Eli Gorey was in the later seasons of Ballers, which I recently watched this past year. And he was great in that too. But seeing him change to this, I was, man.
He was Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I was like, this dude is on it.
I'm too pretty.
He's so good. In this movie, it's funny you were talking about like kind of slower, character-driven movies, because when I realized this movie was adapted from a stage play, that made a lot of sense.
I picked it up pretty early on. That I was like, this had to have been a stage play at one point. It takes place in one place almost the entire.
That's the thing. It's like, not if you were to talk about this movie in terms of what happens, that there's not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot happens. It's mostly scenes of people talking in rooms. Like you throw in a Sam Cooke performance and a Muhammad Ali fight here and there. At the time, he was still going by Cassius Clay, I believe.
Yeah, this movie, he's still Cassius Clay.
And yeah, you throw in these things here and there, but for the most part, it's Jim Brown talking to an old white man. The 4 protagonists all talking to each other in a room. 2 of them go off and talk to someone else. Like, it's a lot of dialogue, but it's so good. Kemp Powers is on point. Regina King is on point. So I didn't even mind it. Because
it's really well done.
Yeah, it's so well done. But I was like, oh yeah, this is a play. That makes a lot of sense. Like, I can't act like I've always been the biggest Sam Cooke fan, because obviously his music is before my time. But I do love Chain Gang and Chain's Gonna Come. And the way those songs were used in this movie was so good. Like, I didn't even realize I wanted Chain Gang to be in the movie until the scene where he's doing it. And I was like, oh my God, I love this song. I forgot that.
The thing is, I feel like they worked particularly well because they served a purpose. It wasn't just like, oh, he's a singer, so we're going to have him sing a couple of songs. It was like, no, we're using these songs for a reason.
Yeah, especially Change Gonna Come. with how it fits into the whole narrative. And man, to me, what do you want to say about it?
It's definitely one of my favorite movies of this year, which is hard to say because we're still in February. You said this, I think, in our last review,
Yeah,
that it's really hard to say that something is your favorite movie so early on in the year because there's so many more movies that might come out for the rest of the year. But it is definitely one of my favorite things I've seen all year so far. I thought the cast did a spectacular job. I thought Regina King did a wonderful job directing, and this is like her feature film debut. She did a wonderful
right.
job. Already
She
talks
killed it.
about her being nominated for an Oscar for this film.
I hope she gets it.
I mean, yeah, possibly. She's got Chloe Zhao to go up against for Nomadland, and that's some tough competition.
Sure.
But yeah, it's an amazing movie. It was so good that like immediately after I watched it, I really wanted to see it again, and I convinced another friend of mine to watch it with me on a different day. I was like, "Yo, it's Black History Month. Watch this movie with me."
Nice.
I'm also going to do the same thing and get her to watch Blind Spotting with me before the month is over.
Oh,
do it.
yes.
Do it.
But yeah, it's so good. And what I loved most about it was that I was watching it with my mom, and as I was watching the movie and listening to the conversations that they were having, I kept thinking to myself, these are conversations that I've literally had within the last few weeks between me and my brother, or me and my cousins. Actually, it was me, my brother, and my cousins all together having this one discussion, which went about as long as this movie does. Like, this idea of, what are you doing for your community? Do you put focus in trying to build up your capital and economically building your society? Or is it better to just go a different route? And, it made me realize that everybody has their part to play in that. And while I might not agree with the finances first approach to things,
Right.
that is something that does have to be done by somebody. So yeah, I just thought it was really interesting that the conversations that are had in this movie are still conversations that we're having today and are still very relevant, if not even more relevant than they were during the setting of this movie. Also, Lance Reddick is in this movie and he's great.
Oh, he was so good.
So good. I also saw a tweet. You were talking about you're interested whenever Malcolm X is in a film and being portrayed. I saw a tweet where somebody talked about they were curious as to what Kingsley would bring to the role and how he would make it different from Denzel Washington's Malcolm X, because Denzel
Right.
is the most popular version of Malcolm X we've seen on screen outside of Malcolm X himself. And and somebody said that the difference that Kingsley brought to the role is that this movie allowed us to see Malcolm X be joyful, which is not something that we usually get to see. We usually
Yeah.
get to see Malcolm X always constantly angry, which he had every right to be. But
Yeah.
it was nice to see Malcolm X in an environment where he was with friends and he could be carefree, happy, joyful, even with all the things that were going on in his life and in the world at that time. He was hanging out with his boys.
Mhm.
And, what is Malcolm X like in that environment? And that's what Kingsley got to bring to that role.
Yeah, he was great, man. It was so adorable when he brought out the ice cream. They were like, "Yo, thought we're having a party. Like, what we got?" And he was like, "We got some ice cream."
Yeah,
I
he was
was
like vanilla and vanilla. And somebody was like, wow, how ironic.
right.
Also, Aldous Hodge as Jim Brown. Fantastic
He was
job as well.
so good.
Cannot wait to see him in Black Adam as Hawkman. He's such a good actor.
He was so good. And I think one of the important things about, like kind of what you were saying earlier with the discussion that they were having, is that this movie doesn't really seem to just side with one particular person, because it gives you both, like it gives you every side of every conversation. Sam Cooke and Malcolm X go at it pretty much the whole movie. And Malcolm X will say something and I'm like, yeah, he's got a good point. But then Sam will come back with, yes, I'm not always being the most
Pro-Black.
like militant, or yeah, but I am doing things to help my people in this way, in this way, in this way. Like, let me tell you how I'm doing. I'm like, all right, he's
Yeah.
helping. He's not doing nothing. So
That
it's like,
Rolling
all right.
Stones conversation, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
such a great moment on film. Just I love that because he's like, you just well, you know what makes more money than a number one on the R&B charts and a number one on the pop charts, like
Right.
it's just
Yeah,
like,
it's
or
such
like
a
no,
good
what
movie.
makes more money than number 97 on the pop charts? A song that goes number one on the pop charts, I think it is.
Something like
Just
that. Yeah.
such a good scene, and he's just Leslie Odom Jr. is just so good in that scene too.
He was great.
They're
He
all
was really
great
good.
throughout the movie, just for the record, but like, man, just
Yeah.
they're all so good. It's a really great movie. If you haven't seen it, it is on Amazon Prime. It is fantastic, and it's definitely going to be up for an Oscar this year. So check it out.
Yes, I recommend it if you have the temperament for mostly dialogue-driven movies, and you're not racist.
Fair. Next up on my list has nothing to do with either of those things.
Oh goodness.
We're going to go for a 2-for-1. Are you guys ready for a 2-for-1 lesson? The movies that I'm
Let's
about
do
to
it.
talk about are Tron and Tron Legacy.
Oh,
Tron is directed by Steven Lisberger, and it stars Jeff Bridges, Bruce Boxleitner, David Warner, and Cindy Morgan. And we also have Tron Legacy, which is directed by Joseph Kosinski, which stars Garrett Hedlund, Olivia Wilde, James Frain, and it brings back Jeff Bridges and Bruce Boxleitner as the eponymous Tron. Now, the first movie, Tron, is a computer hacker is abducted into the digital world and forced to participate in gladiatorial games where his only chance of escape is with the help of a heroic security program. And Legacy is about the son of a virtual world designer goes looking for his father and ends up inside the digital world that his father designed. He meets his father's corrupted creation and a unique ally who was born inside the digital world. Both movies are a lot of fun, first off. There is no other movie that's ever been made like Tron. Tron was a first of its kind and the only of its kind because we figured out how to make technology work a lot better than what they were doing with Tron.
Yes.
So you'll never see another movie quite like it. The world of Tron is just a fantastic world, which is why Disney keeps coming back to it, even though it does not make money. Which sucks. I want Tron to make money because it really is an interesting series of movies. So I had never seen the first Tron before the quarantine watch. I think I had seen pieces of it, but I had never watched it all the way through. I was watching Prop Culture, which I have mentioned on this show several times before. And they have an episode on Tron. And after I watched it, I was like, you know what? I should just watch Tron. So I watched Tron and then I watched Tron Legacy, which is why this is on the list. It's so crazy how prescient the first Tron was about digital identities. Because that's what the first Tron is about. It's about like that's the point of Jeff Bridges' character going into the digital world. It's all about how we ourselves would end up in the digital realm somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right. That's what we've done. We have digital identities. Like there is a digital persona of ourselves within the internet. It's just not quite as literal as Tron has it, obviously. But like it was so spot on about our digital world of now and the internet and how we use it and things like that, which is so crazy to think about.
Demi,
Yeah.
I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but have you ever seen the first Digimon movie?
Yes, years ago, back when I
I
was
would
in my
like
Digimon
you
phase.
to watch it again and compare, because the whole time you were doing that plot summary, I was like, this is just a Digimon movie.
Yeah, except Tron came first. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but
Yeah, no. But I mean, I'll probably rewatch it. Who knows? Maybe I'll find time. But yeah, I love Tron Legacy's visual aesthetic and how it kind of evolved the first movie's aesthetic. Because the first movie looks cool too, but it was made in like the 80s. So like you can tell it's got the 80s effects and stuff like that and production design. How they did it was really cool, but oh my gosh, it was probably so time consuming. And they talk about that on Prop Culture. But like the Tron Legacy is just such a vibe. Like the aesthetic is it's so cool. Like I almost wish we could live in a world where you could wear stuff like that and that everything had like the neon lights like that. It's so cool looking. I love it so much. I love the design on these films. They had some really cool game concepts within these films. And then like the light cycle is like one of the coolest vehicles to ever be in film. Light cycles are awesome. Like I want to get to a point in life where I can have a movie memorabilia room and I want to own a light cycle that is human sized. I would say life size, but then it would be the size of a computer screen. So no, I want to
Right. Yeah.
I want a human sized light cycle cuz they look so cool. But I love these movies so much, and I have to say I'm not super stoked about the third one that they're making. But
what do we
I'm gonna
know
see
about it
in-
other than that Jared Leto exists?
Yeah, that's about it. And
That's fair.
I would love to follow the characters that we got in Tron Legacy. I'm interested in what they're doing because there was a whole cliffhanger that they kind of left us off on. So I want to see where that goes. So That's why I'll watch the third movie. I want to see if they continue off with that storyline somehow. Tron and Tron Legacy, if you have never seen those movies, they are awesome sci-fi movies that you guys can catch on Disney Plus right now. They are both on there.
Tron Legacy, I've seen it. I thought I saw it when I was younger. It came out in 2010.
It did. It came out our senior year of high school.
I thought that movie was way older for some reason. I don't know why. I was not as young as I thought I was when I saw that movie. But yeah, it was fun.
It's awesome. I
Alright.
wanted to do a Throwback Thursday for it, but we got really busy in December, so that wasn't a thing that happened.
Yeah, December.
I mean, we can
Yeah.
do one when the third one comes out.
That's true.
It's true.
Probably will. Dallas, what's
Yeah.
next on your list?
Next is a movie that I forgot to write a little hint for, so I didn't. The Opening Act is the name of the movie. And this is another reason why I wanted Gabby to be here, because when I saw this trailer, I either just sent it to Gabby or I sent it to the chat. And I was like, Gabby, look. And she was like, oh, stand up. Because Gabby loves stand-up comedy. And I really like stand-up comedy. This movie is about stand-up comedy. It's written and directed by Steve Byrne, who is a comedian and actor who I love. And part of that love is because he used to come into my job and he was always super nice. First time I saw him, I was like, Steve Byrne. He was like, yeah. And I was like, I like your stuff. And he was like, thanks, man. What's your name? And then we met. And then he pointed out all his comedian friends. And I was like, hey, that's that guy and that guy and that guy. Solid dude. It stars Jimmy O. Yang, Alex Moffat, Cedric the Entertainer, Neil Brennan, Bill Burr, a whole bunch of other comedians, and Debbie Ryan, which I thought was kind of random.
All right.
Yeah, she's cool. They're just like all comedians and then Debbie Ryan. Also, Jermaine Fowler's in it. He pops up. I was like, hey, Jermaine Fowler. The summary is Will's true life passion is to become a stand-up comedian. When given the opportunity to MC a comedy show opening for his hero, Billy G, he must decide if he wants to continue the life he has set up or pursue his dream. And it's one of those, the guy goes on the road, pursue the dream, and his girl is back home, and he's like thrust into this new world. And, obviously you can't succeed right off the bat because that's not conflict. You need conflict in movies. And one thing that I admire is that kind of movie usually lends itself to a plot line where there's relationship issues. Either he does something stupid while he's on the road, or like they haven't seen each other and now there's tension and blah, 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 blah. But this didn't do that. And I was so happy it didn't do that. It was just so refreshing to see a happy, supportive relationship. Like he goes through his trials stuff and he calls her about it. And she's like, well, you're going to be okay. I believe in you. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so sweet. I love it. It's interesting because, when movies are about music or about sports, there are portions of the movie where if it's a football movie, some of the scenes are just going to be like a football game. Same with basketball. If it's You Got Served, some of the movie's just going to be a bunch of dance battles. This one is a stand-up comedy movie, so a lot of it is stand-up comedy routines. But
Hey.
and that was cool. I feel like because Steve Byrne is a really good stand-up comedian, and I assume a lot of the comedians in the movie who guest star wrote their own stuff, but those scenes were really funny to me. It was just kind of like, yo, I can watch stand-up comedy. I'm enjoying it. Some of the other stuff where they kind of went more outlandish with like the situational humor, it didn't really hit for me. It was like hit or miss. For that reason, I wanted to love this movie more than I did, but it was still enjoyable. So I'm happy for Steve Byrne and Jimmy O. Yang because Jimmy O is great and I don't get to see him a lot. Also, Bill Burr is in this movie and I love Bill Burr, but he's not a comedian in the movie. And that sucks. It feels like such a waste. Like he plays Will is the protagonist. He plays his boss, and he's just kind of like the annoying boss who makes him want to quit his job and go pursue his dream. But I'm like, you have all of this stand-up material in the movie, and you have Bill Burr in your movie, but we don't get to see Bill Burr do any stand-up. That was upsetting. But other than that, it's a fun time. I enjoyed it. And Jermaine Fowler's in it, and I like Jermaine Fowler. So shout out to
Nice.
Steve Byrne.
All right. My list is about to get real dark. The next movie on my list is Elizabeth Harvest, directed by Sebastian Gutierrez, starring Abby Lee, Kieran Hines, Carla Gugino, Matthew Beard, and Dylan Baker. Literally, those are the only 5 actors in this movie.
All right.
Newly married, Elizabeth travels with her husband to his vast, luxurious estate. He explains that she can go anywhere she pleases, except
nope.
for one locked, forbidden room.
Yeah, she's gonna die.
Ooh.
I mean,
Obviously, don't tell me that she does, but she gonna die. Like, come on. Why do you even have that one locked room? Why do you do that?
so without giving too much away about this movie, it has some real hardcore Rebecca vibes with its story, if anybody has ever seen Rebecca or read Rebecca. It's a bit sci-fi, a bit horror, and a whole lot of thriller. The movie gets pretty crazy towards the end there. Although it's pretty crazy throughout, I guess. So, yeah. All right. Yeah. But I will say, okay. So I thought the movie was it was pretty average. It was
All
an
right.
interesting concept, but it just felt like it was missing something. And I can't quite pinpoint what, because the performances were pretty good. And I will say that I feel like Abby Lee has seriously found her calling as an actress, because she has so much to do in this movie and she does it really, really well.
I have a question.
Yes.
Abby Lee, is her character into race play in this movie?
No. First off, there are no black people in this movie, so we can't even.
Ooh.
And you know what? I don't want them to be in this movie. That's okay.
That's fair. Yeah, keep us safe outside of this.
Yeah, stay safe. Stay away from these crazy white people. We don't need that in our lives, all right? I hate that that's going to be a question that we ask every time her name comes up.
Yeah, every time.
Because for sure, I'm just going to keep watching movies with her in it. And now every time that comes up, I'm going to be like, no.
Yo, is that slave play being adapted? Because
Stop
Abby
it.
Lee.
Call her
No, don't do this to her.
She did it to herself. She chose to play that role.
Hey, wait, okay, but you guys know who was supposed to play that role before her, right?
Who was it?
Elizabeth Debicki. And the only reason she couldn't do it was because she was filming Tenet at the same time, so there was a scheduling conflict.
Wow, that was a choice.
So they cast Abby Lee 2 or 3 days before, or a week or something before they started filming or something like that. But anyway, she's really great in this. She's really great in this movie. And I wish I could say more, but then I would be spoiling the concept of the movie. So if you want to know what the twist is, go watch it for yourself. I found it on Netflix. I think it might still be on Netflix. Who knows? I watched this movie months ago. It might not be there anymore. But if it is, you guys can find it there. Dallas, what's the last movie on your list?
So this one is a movie that has been talked about on this podcast before, but I hadn't seen it back then. So now it's my turn to join in.
That's a lot of movies.
Yeah, right? It doesn't narrow down anything.
I have no idea.
It's the King of Staten Island.
Oh, you're just joining Gabby on that one.
Yeah.
And she's not here.
I was like, I wanted Gabby to be here for this because I finally saw the movie and I could finally talk to her about it. But then she freaking died.
She ain't her.
She didn't die.
She didn't die, ladies and gentlemen.
She's not dead.
True.
I don't want them to feel like we got a text at some point during this podcast and was like...
That would be an insane way to react to Gabby dying. I was got to text Gabby's dead. So anyway, the King of Staten Island. Yes, Gabby, our thoughts are with you. Get better. Directed by Judd Apatow.
Okay.
And written by Judd Apatow, Pete Davidson, and Dave Cyrus. Stars Pete Davidson, Marissa Tomei, and Bill Burr. Yeah, guys, Bill Burr is back. Summary is Scott has been in a case of Arrested Development since his firefighter dad died. He spends his days smoking weed and dreaming of being a tattoo artist until events force him to grapple with his grief and take his first steps forward in life. I'm sure Gabby said a lot about this movie.
She has.
When she talked about it.
Twice.
Yes. Right? Okay, I was going to say, I think she talked about it more than once on here. I was so disappointed that I hadn't seen it yet. But then I did. And one of the things that Gabby mentioned is that for her, one of the shortcomings was it didn't go deep enough into the
drama.
The drama. Yeah. And the emotions and the pain. And it was kind of more lighthearted than she wanted. And I was saying, that's probably perfect for me because I want to laugh. I don't want to be sad. And yeah, I love this movie because it's funny. What I consider diving into the drama and what Gabby considers are different things because we watch different things and have different, temperaments. Because this movie definitely goes into that. There's a lot of self-deprecation, grief, unhealthy coping methods. Scott is a very difficult character to like for a good amount of the time. I still like him because he's Pete Davidson. But I'm just watching. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you like this? But I love Pete Davidson. I love Marissa Tomei. I love Bill Burr. It's funny. I watched the opening act the day before this movie. So I watched that and I was like, not enough Bill Burr. And then I watched this the next day and I was like, okay, cool. This is what I needed. Fun time. Very funny. The kid from Hannah Montana is in it. Rico.
Oh, Moises.
Yeah. I never watched Hannah Montana, but I've seen that guy before. And I was like, he looks familiar. I was like, oh my God, it's the kid from Hannah Montana.
Yeah. He does a lot of, I think, film and photography work nowadays, with Jaden Smith. Nice. He's good friends with Jaden.
Nice. Yeah, he was funny. All of Pete's friends are funny in the movie. Also, as I said last time, shout out to Crohn's disease awareness because Pete Davidson has Crohn's disease in the movie and I think in real life. And I was like, yeah, you tell him, Pete. Let him know what we're going through. Let him know we don't need hot dogs at baseball games.
Okay.
Yeah, I recommend it if you're a fan of Pete Davidson and his humor. There's a certain type of person that this character is, and I feel like those type of people should watch the movie. But I don't know how to describe that, so I'm just gonna leave it at what I said. Also, if you have Crohn's disease, watch it because you're not gonna hear your disease talked about in any other movie. Moving on.
Not until Dallas gets to write his.
Oh, that's gonna be in all of my movies.
All right. We're going to do another 2-for-1 to finish us off.
Finish us off.
Yeah. Remember when I was talking about Rebecca?
Yes.
Well, next up on my list is Rebecca, the 1940 edition and the 2020 edition.
Oh, fun.
All fun. So the 1940s version was directed by Alfred Hitchcock, and it stars Laurence Olivier, Joan Fontaine, George Sanders, and Judith Anderson. The 2020 version is directed by Ben Wheatley. Also stars Lily James, Armie Hammer, and Kristen Scott Thomas. I'm going to read off the synopsis that they have on the 2020 version because it covers both movies anyway. A young newlywed arrives at her husband's imposing family estate on a windswept English coast and finds herself battling the shadow of his first wife, Rebecca, whose legacy lives on in the house long after her death. Are you guys getting the same vibes as Elizabeth Harvest? Because that's exactly what I was talking about.
This is the same movie.
So it's very familiar. But yeah, I've heard of this one.
Yes. So we're going to talk about the OG first, obviously, because it was made in 1940. And I watched it, I think, a few weeks before I watched the 2020 version. First off, the original is a classic for good reason. I watched it and was once again just amazed by the mastery that Hitchcock had with filmmaking. You hear about Alfred Hitchcock a lot, about how great he was at making movies. And I haven't seen a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies. He's made one of my favorite movies, which is Rear Window. But I haven't watched all of his movies, which is probably blasphemous as a filmmaker, but whatever.
I mean, he has a lot.
He has so many movies. Anyway, yeah, Alfred Hitchcock is actually one of my uncle's favorite filmmakers, and he's a filmmaker as well. But this was my first time watching Rebecca, and just like, yeah, every single time I watch a Hitchcock movie, I'm always just like, yeah, this guy was amazing at making movies. Like, he's so good at this. Like, he was amazing at this. The genre switches in his movie are so smooth. Like, this is a movie that starts off that, it's like, oh, this is kind of a romance. Okay, this is nice. This is cool. This is nice. And then when you get to the house, it's like, okay, this is a thriller now. Okay. Okay. And then you get to the plot twist and it's like, oh, this is a mystery. Oh,
Fun.
okay. Like, you just jump from genre to genre and it never feels weird. It's all very smooth and it feels just so perfect. The actors in the movie are obviously, amazing, but Laurence Olivier is so good as Mr. De Winter. He is fantastic. The plot twist scene in the movie is it's perfect. I watched that scene and was just like, this is perfection. This is what movie making is supposed to be. This is so good. Like, it totally flips the movie on its head. If you've never watched this movie, please go watch it. It is such a good movie, and I don't want to give too much away, which is why I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Now, having seen the original, going into the remake, I was excited. Obviously, I was already excited because I knew Lily James was in it, and I had been looking into the filming of it for a while and when it was going to come out and stuff like that. The remake obviously does not live up to the OG, like, at all. Not even close. However, I did know that Lily would be amazing the moment that I realized the type of character that Mrs. De Winter is. And that type of character is something that Lily thrives at. This very kind of shy and introverted type of character. Like, that felt very much this very doe-eyed, naive young girl. It's very much something that Lily does really well. I mean, she does everything really well, but that's something that she does very, very well. But Kristen Scott Thomas kind of steals the show and is wonderful as Mrs. Danvers, who is their head of housekeeping or whatever, who has an obsession with Rebecca, the original Mrs. De Winter. She's so good. And her and Lily together, their scenes together were so amazing. The visuals in this movie, not quite as gothic as the original movie, but they are still really, really, really dope. I do really like the cinematography in this movie. The nightmares that Mrs. De Winter has are pretty awesome to look at. There is a mirror scene where it's just a room of mirrors that they're having a discussion in, and dear God, it's gorgeous. Like, I was like, there's just mirrors in this room. How are you filming this? There's just mirrors everywhere. But it's so confusing And it's supposed to be because Mrs. De Winter is kind of losing it at that moment. I'm glad that they gave Mrs. De Winter more agency this time around. You will notice that I am only saying Mrs. De Winter. It's because her character has no name other than Mrs. De Winter, and it's annoying.
All right.
Ew.
But that's also supposed to be part of the character. But I'm glad that they gave her more agency this time around. She doesn't quite just sit around and let things happen. She also occasionally will take action to do things as well, which is really nice. But some of the new changes in the movie don't really hit. Armie Hammer just cannot live up to Olivier's performance, especially in that plot twist scene. And you know what? If the rumors about him recently are true, he definitely should have brought that energy to this role because it definitely would have made that much better. But
Should have got a little Hannibal Lecter with it.
just a little bit. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he did. The original Rebecca is fantastic, and I probably will rewatch it one day because I also love rewatching Rear Window. The remake is all right. It's cool. I will probably rewatch some scenes just to watch Lily James act, but there are plenty of other movies I can do that for. You can check out the new one if you would like to. It's probably easier to find because it's a Netflix film. I think I found the OG on YouTube, though, if you want to watch it on YouTube. So yeah, that is Rebecca. I would highly recommend the 1940s version, though. So good. So freaking good. I forgot to mention something. Literally, I Care a Lot is just the embodiment of Be Gay, Do Crimes. So if you're into that, definitely watch this movie.
The problem is I am into that, but I also don't like watching people scam. That just feels like a crime I can't really endorse if you're scamming ordinary people.
You're definitely not supposed to endorse these people in this movie.
Yeah, but it's like, do I even want to watch them do it, you know?
Colin, you don't do no crimes.
Well, I don't do no crimes. No, but I'm saying like if you're going to do crimes, do them against like, you know, the rich people.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eat the rich.
Yes.
Does that phrase carry a different weight now that actors are being accused of cannibalism?
Ooh. I don't know. I guess it might.
Because let's just say, for the sake of like hypotheticals, Armie Hammer really just wanted to eat the rich. Like he just took it to heart.
Uh-huh.
Is that better?
No.
Okay.
Because eat the rich, it is facetious. Is that the word? Like no one is actually endorsing cannibalism. So
Take it too literally.
Some people take things literally. We just got to be careful with our wording.
Well, you shouldn't. Don't eat people, no matter who they are. Just don't.
All right, good to know.
But that's all we've got for you guys today. Yeah, thank you guys for joining us.
Yes, thank you for listening to all of that. As always, thank you, Crown Digital, Brandon, and Io for putting us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To me, thank you for editing. Thank you for vibing with me on One Night in Miami.
Yes.
Colin, thank you for having heard of Shadow in the Cloud, because otherwise, one day I'd look back and think that movie was some kind of hallucination.
It's like Dragon Nose.
Exactly. But now that I know that you have heard of it, I'm like, cool. I know that really happened. I wasn't having some kind of weird fever dream at the drive-in for some reason. Anyway, audience, let us know what movies you've been watching during this quarantine. Also, when you don't feel well, do you pop random pills? Let us know.
Stop it.
I'm just trying to see who we got listening, what kind of people we're talking to out there. Yeah, let us know answers to all these questions. On the medias, Twitter, y'all_different, Instagram and Tumblr, Creative Differences Podcast, or Facebook.com/Creative Differences PC. If you want to hear more about random weird movies I watch at the drive-in, because I do it pretty often, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at a king named Simba.
You can find me on Twitter at Duck McGuck.
And if you guys want to talk to me about morally ambiguous characters, you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Dreamy Films. Dreamy is spelled DREEMI. Thanks again for joining us.
And you can find Gabby on Twitter at Be Gay, Do Crimes.
Yeah.
What?
What?
For Gabby?
Yes. Be gay, do crimes, but not if that crime is cannibalism.
Yeah.
All right. It's been real different. Bye.